The following special presentation of your Hometown Health Connection Community Conversations focuses on autism spectrum disorder, ASD, and is presented in partnership with WBBZ-TV and Buffalo Healthy Living magazine. We all need to be aware of autism, and the perfect opportunity to highlight issues that impact equity by engaging in conversations about neurodiversity is going to happen right here. Because according to the WIT network, the term neurodiversity combines two words, neurological and diversity. Neurodiversity is an umbrella term for conditions such as autism spectrum disorder, ASD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, and Tourette's. Often neurodivergent individuals have one or more of these conditions. The word neurodiversity was coined by an Australian sociologist, Judith Singer, in 1998 to recognize that people with neurological conditions have brains that are just simply wired differently. Now, recently, the Centers for Disease Control updated their data, noting that 1 in 36 children are identified with ASD. ASD occurs in all racial, ethnic, and socioeconomic groups and is 4 times more common among boys than girls. About 1 in 6 children, ages 3 to 17 years, were diagnosed with a developmental disability between 2009 and 2017, which included autism, ADHD, blindness, and cerebral palsy. Both of our guests for this special show have a deep understanding and appreciation for neurodiversity, and we're honored to have them here to help educate us. Mickey Rowe has been an actor, director, consultant, public speaker, highly sought after, both nationally and internationally. The first autistic actor to play Christopher Boone in the title role of the Tony Award-winning play, The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, which was just at Shea 710 a few years ago. Mickey was the lead in the Tony Award-winning play Amadeus and more. A disability and accessibility expert, Mickey has led diversity, equity, and inclusion trainings and workshops for Nordstrom, Pfizer, so many big companies, the Metropolitan Opera. He was founding member of artistic director of a national disability theater, which works in partnership with Tony Award-winning companies, and author of the award-winning best-selling book, Fearlessly Different. Mickey joins us from Seattle. And we have another guest. Amy Pinder is a neurodiversity-affirming speech language therapist and owner and founder of Circles of Communication. Amy has extensive experience working with individuals with autism and other neurodevelopmental differences. She assesses and treats children and adults with diverse communication challenges in public and private school settings, as well as private practice. Amy is also co-founder of the Inclusion Festival, we'll hear more about that, the nation's first and only music and wellness festival designed to be sensory-friendly and accessible. An executive director of Accessible Festivals, a nonprofit dedicated to making music and recreation accessible to all individuals. And by the way, this year's festival takes place July 14th through the 16th in Kempton, Pennsylvania. So get down there to Kempton, and you'll include music, health, and wellness workshops, camping, and more. Amy joins us from Central New Jersey. Mickey's in Seattle. Tell us a little bit about your background. I know there's so much to tell, and I understand that, honestly, you weren't even diagnosed with autism until you were in college, from what I understand. What was life like for you growing up?
Yeah, so I was actually really lucky as far as people with late diagnoses go, in that I got a lot of early intervention help for my autism. So all through school, elementary school through high school, I was in speech therapy, occupational therapy, and special education. I really wish at that time that there had been neurodivergent affirming speech therapists like Amy. I really wish that I could have had Amy as a speech therapist or speech pathologist, because she would have really changed my life and given me a whole different experience than I had in school. But so most likely, because I was in special ed, getting speech therapy, occupational therapy, and all of those things, my family most likely knew that I had autism when I was younger. but probably felt scared or nervous to tell me or to share that label with me, because they didn't have a community like this one uh, here in Buffalo telling them, you don't need to be scared. Autism comes with both strengths and challenges, and that the things that make us all different from each other are actually oftentimes our biggest strengths. And when we can really value our differences and value people who are different from us, it only makes the world a better place.
Amy, Mickey brings up an interesting point where he just talked about things that were happening for his upbringing. What is generally the age when a parent or somebody involved in parenting looks at a child and says they might be autistic? When do you start testing for something like that?
Most parents become aware of their kids' differences around the time that communication milestones start to occur. So I'd say that's around a year and a half. That's when parents seem to start to notice and seems to start to talk to their pediatricians about differences. And then they're provided with a whole array of options that usually aren't neurodiversity affirming, and that can be quite scary at first to try to navigate a very medical system that has, for years operated on the idea that autism is something that needs to be cured or fixed, when rather the neurodiversity movement asserts that autism is a natural and normal variation in the human brain that contributes to society and has helped us move forward and is something to be celebrated, and the unique brains that we're seeing are something to be strengthened and nurtured.
And Mickey, I'm to understand that, as we just talked about with Amy about the parents and where you would go at an early age, your mother, from what I understand, really didn't embrace this concept of autism. And as a result, you connected with your grandmother, who was a tremendous influence with you and basically raised you and built the confidence in you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think especially when I was growing up, there were a lot of organizations trying to make people feel really scared around the idea of autism. And I was probably just not the kid that my mom expected to have when she pictured having a kid. And I think she also fell victim to something that a lot of parents with really good intentions unintentionally fall victim to. I was non-speaking throughout my earliest years. And there's often a misconception that non-speaking autistic people don't speak simply because we aren't smart enough to speak. We aren't intelligent enough to speak. And sometimes there's a misconception that because a non-speaking person isn't speaking, they probably aren't understanding things that are being said about them either, which can lead to a lot of times autistic people being talked about as if they're not in the room with you. So my mom would say things oftentimes on the phone with her friends, referring to me, her firstborn kid, her different firstborn child, saying, well, the first pancake never turns out, which really were hurtful to me and made me feel like I was not valued or made me feel like I was not valuable. But I was so lucky that my grandma really took me in and raised me essentially. And my grandma showed me that, you are valuable, and whatever your interests are, I'm going to lean into those and affirm them 100%. If you feel more comfortable always playing a character, going through social interactions through that lens of playing a character, great. I'm going to make you the pirate costume. I'm going to make you sew you your clown costumes. And she really just affirmed who I was, validated me, and made me feel valuable, which was
and made
invaluable to my experience.
And made you independent. I understand in reading the article in Buffalo Healthy Living magazine, she allowed you to kind of explore on the beach, and you were able to really become more independent.
Absolutely, yeah. I think she really put a lot of trust in me and allowed me to feel like I was unsupervised in a way that was really, I think, helpful for my development in letting me just explore the beaches of Puget Sound, explore all the sea life in the tide pools and things like that I really enjoyed. As I'm sure Amy knows and does so much work to combat in her practice, often there's so much pressure on people with disabilities to behave in ways that are most convenient for the non-disabled people, or to try to speak or communicate in the ways that are most convenient for non-autistic people. So rather than validating AAC as a valid form of communication, or validating typing on a keyboard or drawing pictures or any of these things as really valid ways to communicate, so kind of saying, nope, if you don't speak, I can't connect with you or have a relationship with you. But when my grandma let me just explore the beaches by myself, you know, all the animals, all the sea otters and things like that in Puget Sound, I felt like they were connecting with me, even if I didn't speak English to them.
Amy, do you think that Mickey is onto something there, that, you know, people who are counseling people who are autistic or their parents look to see a certain behavior? How do you respond to what Mickey just said there?
Yeah, absolutely. People view speech as the goal, and it's certainly the predominant way that humans communicate with each other, but it's also not the only way. And I think that most people aren't aware of all of the subtle forms of communication, and that the ways that they can connect with others that are not verbal, or that are not through speech. So yeah, often families come to me with the goal of, I want my child to speak, and then my role is to educate them about all of the other ways that humans communicate, and about all of the other skills that we need to focus on and nurture to make a person feel comfortable enough to communicate. I tell everyone that we need to be regulated in order to communicate. And we also need to feel comfortable with who we are and empowered to let our true self show in order to feel like our words matter, whatever form they come in. AAC is augmentative and alternative communication. So that might be using something like an iPad application to communicate a message, or typing or writing. And all of those things are valid, and they're all ways to connect, and whatever is easiest for a person from moment to moment, because sometimes that changes for folks based on their regulatory state, is important. And I teach parents to recognize subtle shifts in their children's regulation, ways to support it so that they can express themselves in whatever way is accessible to them.
Amy, you were an actress. We saw you on stage at Studio Arena Theater in the Secret Garden. And what drew you now to be on the East Coast and work with folks who are neurodivergent? Where did that passion come from?
Well, that was a long time ago that I was in theater, but I had very strong interests as a child that seemed to be very, very different from my peers. I was really interested in theater, and I was really interested in disabilities themselves. I was fascinated by people that had disabilities, and I wanted to learn all about disabilities. And actually, my first goals were playing disabled parts on the stage. I actually never got those roles. I applied or auditioned for Helen Keller. I never got that role. She was my idol as a kid. But I think that acting helped me learn to just kind of tune in to different parts of myself that I think help my clients today find different parts of themselves, if that makes sense. For a tangible example, like some kids respond really well to me being really calm and gentle, and some need really high energy in order to get themselves going. And, you know, I adjust my energy level regardless of what it really is in that moment to meet my clients' needs. And I think I learned that from the stage.
You both share a love of the arts, and Mickey, you've done so well with your performance. Do you think that channeling a creative energy through artistic expression, like being on stage, has helped you, Mickey?
Absolutely. I mean, I'll give this example while we're on the topic of speech therapy. You know, I was in speech therapy for so long as a kid, and I found it, because it wasn't Amy's practice, this was through the public school system, which worked very differently than how Amy works. I found what I had to do very frustrating. And I didn't feel like I was really learning a lot through speech therapy, through the school system that I went through. But then all of a sudden, when I got to college and was doing theater, you know, there were voice classes where everyone is learning these exact same skills that I was trying to work on in speech therapy. And instead of me being the focus, instead of the focus being, hey, Mickey, here's something that's wrong with you, here's a problem with you that we need to fix, I got to learn and work on those exact same skills, but through the lens of, hey, this is something we're all learning together to create something awesome and creative and productive. So theater really helped me more, I think, than the speech therapy that I had, because it was utilizing all these things that Amy has learned through her practice and Amy taps into. And now I get to be a professional public speaker, just traveling and speaking to students and educators and occupational therapists all over the country.
Well, on stage and speaking to others, thousands really across the country, and this coming from an individual who was told maybe you weren't going to be able to achieve much of anything. What motivated you and made you keep trying, persevere, and get that break?
Yeah, you know, I'm asked that question a lot, and I should have a better answer for it. But I think to a certain extent, I really just didn't have a choice. You know, it's estimated that the unemployment rate for people on the autism spectrum, and this statistic was from, I think, 2019 pre-pandemic. I don't have a new statistic for 2023, but in 2019, it was estimated that 85% of college graduates on the autism spectrum were unemployed or underemployed. And then even if you can get a job, there is currently no federal minimum wage for people with disabilities. So if someone has a developmental disability like autism, even though the federal minimum wage is currently $7.25 an hour, if you have a developmental disability like autism, you can legally be paid as little as a few pennies per hour. So because of this, I fell into all of that unemployment and turned to street performing. You know, stilt walking and circus skills like Amy uses in her practice sometimes were one of my special interests as a kid and all growing up. So when no one else would hire me, I went out to all the farmers markets on my stilts, twisting balloons and juggling on a unicycle, and did that for as long as I could. But you can only make so much doing that. And I quickly realized I needed to dream bigger than the streets. So I turned to advocating for the only show on Broadway with an autistic lead character to start auditioning autistic actors for the role.
It's a great show. If anybody hasn't seen it, I highly recommend you do. And Amy, you know, we're talking about Mickey's journey and how he got motivated through creativity. A lot of students are in school now, and you've worked with students both in public and private school settings and in private therapy. What do you do to impart in your practice how you can help the neurodivergent population to feel like they're not pushed off to the side and make them more effective?
Well, it's all about nurturing their confidence and giving them the skills to advocate for themselves, because we do live in a world that undervalues disability, and it's imperative to be an advocate if you're an individual who is disabled. So I really focus on teaching self-advocacy skills, and then for post-21-year-olds who have graduated from the school system, connecting them with resources and agencies that are working in the space of creating job opportunities is really important.
Very important. You know, we've had interns here at WBBZ Television who are autistic, and it's always been very inspiring to see, and we do a telethon each year for the Dr. Robert Warner Rehabilitation Center here in Buffalo. And, you know, we have a lot of great stories to tell in Buffalo, and I'm hoping that, you know, across the country, the work that you're talking about, Mickey, and the work that you're doing, Amy, in New Jersey helps. Mickey, on stage, you know, here at WBBZ, Annette Pinder from Buffalo Healthy Living Magazine helps me. We have questions, we have a teleprompter. It's all very neat and compact. But you had to memorize your lines and, you know, really jump into that whole experience and interact with fellow actors. How was that experience like for you? It seems like it comes naturally. You seem very comfortable just speaking.
Yeah, I think that when I'm on stage as an actor with memorized lines, going through pre-choreographed blocking, which is when you move to this part of the stage or that part of the stage, or when I'm public speaking, when a school invites me to a school assembly or to do educator professional development, that is so much easier for me than if, let's say, John, you and I were walking down the street and we passed each other and recognized each other. That would be so much more difficult for me because the roles are not as clear. There's not this clear structure that says, here's how I'm supposed to act and here's how you're supposed to act. Like there is right now, right? You, John, you're the interviewer and I'm the interviewee. You ask the questions and I'm supposed to sound smart and funny. So it makes it really kind of clear and logical and well laid out. Whereas if we passed each other on the street or we're going to meet each other just for coffee as peers, there aren't those clear roles that make it quite as easy for me to navigate.
Well,
Amy,
and
jumping
yeah, I was just
jumping
going to
back
say,
to something you said about advocating and encouraging, how important you found it is to encourage your clients and students to advocate. One thing that I like to remember that I think is important for all people, because really everyone here watching this show has had to advocate for themselves or for their company or on behalf of their children at some point in their life. And I like to remind people, so often when we're advocating for someone or something, we can feel like we're being a burden sometimes. I know I feel like I'm a burden so frequently. But in reality, when we're advocating for ourselves, we're actually helping everyone and making the world a better place for everyone. I'll give two really quick, brief examples from the disability community, just because that's my lived experience in my community, but I promise it works no matter how you apply it. Right? Deaf and hard of hearing people needed to advocate for things like captions to be put on apps like YouTube or Netflix or TikTok so they could access those apps. But now I can watch a YouTube video when I'm on the bus or on a train or in a waiting room without bothering people around me. Or students, if they're in a class that's boring, can watch the TikTok videos in class without their teacher noticing. So in this way, their advocacy has actually made all of our lives easier. Or when I'm pushing all my kids, I have a blended family now and have 4 kids. When I'm pushing my kids in the stroller, right? And I see the curb cut, right? That curb cut that people with mobility disabilities needed to advocate for actually makes my life easier, even though I don't have a mobility disability. It helps me when I'm pushing the stroller with all my kids on it. So when we advocate for ourselves, when we make the world more accessible to neurodivergent people, we're actually also helping ourselves. We're making the world better for everyone and more easy for everyone.
and Amy, he's right, isn't it? You need an advocate to help move you forward in life.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and it really speaks to an innovative way of thinking, and that is supported by research about disabled folks. When disabled people are included in decision making in business, they often have more creative, outside the box thinking and can help solve problems that not everyone else on the team would think of. So there's so many benefits to including all different types of brains and abilities, and there really is a ripple effect to doing that.
Our time is moving so quickly. We have about 5 minutes left. Mickey, you touched on your family, and without getting too deep, I understand you married a woman and it didn't work out, and you were told maybe, you know, you should be lucky that you found the first wife, but that didn't work out. Tell us the journey and where you are now with your family and your current wife.
Absolutely, yeah. I was told all growing up that, you know, I'd be lucky to find anyone who wanted to marry me. I think we see themes like this all the time on viral YouTube videos where someone asks a student with a disability out to the dance, and it seems like, wow, this is a huge act of charity you did by inviting this person. So I fell victim to that and believed all these things that were being said about myself. And that led me to marrying the first person who expressed any interest in wanting to be in a relationship with me. And then to later having to escape an abusive relationship in the middle of the night with my autistic kid in hand. And so that was really hard. And it's another one of the reasons why it is so important we teach all students, particularly students who are different or students who have disabilities, to value themselves, how valuable they are. So important that we teach students how valuable they are. But I was able to escape that situation and keep my kids safe in the process. And I realized how valuable I was and how valuable I was as a human, not in spite of my autism, but also because of all the ways in which my autism makes me different. And now I'm married to my beautiful wife, Helen. We have a blended family. I brought 2 kids. She brought 2 kids. We have 4 together now. So we're like a Brady Bunch for the 21st century. And we have a lot of fun together.
That's funny. You're not old enough to remember the Brady Bunch, Mickey or Amy.
I watched the Brady Bunch. I used to watch the reruns on Nick at Night, I think.
So did I.
Yeah, we run it here on WBBZ. Amy, in our remaining moments, I would think that Mickey is inspiring not only to you, but to the people that he speaks to and opens their minds as to what needs to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone could use a role model and an example of someone who has, followed their dreams and persisted through challenges. And that's really important for all of us, whether we identify as disabled or not. And I think especially important for the neurodivergent community who is repeatedly being told that, they're not adequate or that they need to change things about themselves in order to fit into the society as it exists. But that's changing slowly but surely, and Mickey's a role model of that, an example of that.
And Mickey, I guess you'll have the final word. If there's anything you want people to know about your experiences or what their perception is of autism, what would you say?
I'd have to throw it back to Amy and repeat something that she said earlier, which is that people with disabilities are some of the best creative problem solvers in the entire world, because we've had to be creative problem solvers our entire life to navigate a world that wasn't necessarily built or designed with us in mind. And so make sure that you are including people with disabilities as leaders, and hiring them into your organization, and valuing that when we embrace all of our differences, we are only able to work better with each other, utilizing all of our different strengths.
And I would be remiss if I didn't let you offer a plug, Amy, for the programs that you're presenting soon coming up in Pennsylvania.
Oh, sure. Thanks so much. So Accessible Festivals is a nonprofit organization. We see the value in creating spaces where people can come together solely for the sake of pleasure and recreation. So we've created our own Accessible Music and Wellness Festival that takes place July 14th, 15th, and 16th this year in Kempton, Pennsylvania, which is in the Lehigh Valley. There's lots of workshops spanning a variety of educational and recreational topics. We have community conversations, sensory-friendly live music, lots of relaxation spaces, and just places for people to authentically gather. The purpose is for people to realize that we have a lot in common despite differences, and that we're better together, and that we're stronger when we learn from one another and embrace those differences.
Amy and Mickey are very special people. Now, here are some websites that you can check out that will help you find out more information. Let's start with Mickey's website. It's mickeyrowe.com. Now, you can learn more about Mickey, watch videos of his acting clips and his television appearances. You can purchase his book. You can even arrange to have him speak at your organization. Here's another website, circleofcommunication.com. This is Amy's private practice, which includes online, virtual workshops, and learning opportunities for those who do not live close to where she is located in the central New Jersey area. The Inclusion Festival, the website for that is inclusionfestival.com. For information on this year's festival, including volunteering, being a vendor, or donating, it's not that far away, in Kempton, Pennsylvania. And one more website, accessiblefestivals.org. This is a nonprofit organization devoted to making live music and recreational events fully accessible to people of all abilities. The goal of Accessible Festivals is to create uplifting and joyful experiences with a goal of ending stigma associated with neurodiversity. Now, we'll have all this information and more, other websites, on our website. Write all this down, WBBZ-TV and BuffaloHealthyLiving.com. I'm John DeSciullo. Thank you for watching.